very fortunate in Jersey to host many very important sites. And these are now formally protected under the 1965 law, and of course our wealth of landscape and beautiful countryside on the north coast, which is also protected. There's more specific listed building control under the sites of special interest, and Almora Crescent was one of those earliest examples of that. And perhaps more arguably, but I believe certainly, that the retention of Jersey's rural character was really something that came out of the 65 law, and the fact that we still benefit from much of that countryside today, I think, is a testament to that law. Not everyone shares the view, of course. Some people regard the planning department of the graveyard of ambition. Great money-making ideas thwarted is what that says if you can't read it at the back. And planners are not always welcomed. Even we have to answer to higher authorities. So what happened after the 64 law? Well, although it was a good set of foundations and clearly a good start, it was limited, I think, in its ability to deliver collective change. It really enabled very little or no discussion at all on any major projects, and really no effective public consultation. There was an issue, I think, of public trust and public confidence in that process. Everything, I think, happened behind closed doors. And this sort of general concept of the day that government knew best, well, it might have done, or it might not have done, but certainly it didn't demonstrate that it did through open processes. And of course, our much-loved Island Development Committee, which serviced that law. I did actually look again back through the archives and found some photographs of a typical IDC lunch. There's a picture of the lunch. Yeah. Which is quite nice detail on the sweet corn there, did you notice? And of course that's the after lunch meeting. I think they're closely studying some plans on the table there at that point. A particular favourite of mine was a photograph of an IDC site visit in the 1960s, which I thought was so what happened? So this exclusion of the public from the decision-making process really, I think, built up pressure in the system, and this started in the 1990s. There really was pressure for better planning legislation, and this came through in the 2002 law. Although the 2002 law was written and on the statute, it didn't come into force until 2006, because it was delayed by the addition of a third-party appeal system, which was actually added to the law on the floor of the House when the law was debated. It is, in fact, a remarkable piece of legislation, crafted with skill and passion and foresight, and was quite a lot to do with me. And sort of 10 years later, I think, though, really does still form the bedrock of Jersey's planning system. It introduced the concepts of transparency, and it really did formalise the involvement of other people in the decision-making process. Applications for planning permission had to be publicised, as did the decisions. And the committee meetings, importantly, are held in public. Anyone can go along to those as they can today and express a point of view to the committee in person. And I think that's a tremendously important step forward in demonstrating transparency in decision-making. We completely revised the appeals section. As I said, third-party appeals were added, and those are now available, one of the only jurisdictions in the world that makes that available to people who are directly affected by those planning decisions. And the 2002 law also added new concepts for Jersey anyway, of public inquiries for major planning appeals, public inquiries for the island plan, environmental impact statements, and formal consultation with other bodies. It also introduced a 10-year compulsory cycle for the island plan and legislation for dangerous structures. Planning obligation agreements actually came in the very sort of death throes of the 1964 law. But they were very little used, in fact only once or twice in that law, and are now much more frequently used in the current law. And officers' reports, of course, made public, and the reasons for the decisions. Now, this made us research and search hard for qualified planning staff, which are not always easy to find. Recruitment can be very difficult, as you can see, and we have to seek a certain type of people. Another key thing I think about the 2002 law, though, was the impact on building control. Building control, as I said previously, was previously part of the public health legislation, and bringing it in 2002 linked it to the planning legislation, and then they went forward together for the first time. The 2002 law, and I think, really was a watershed because it did allow for the introduction of environmental concepts into building legislation, which we've seen come through more recently with our bylaws around conservation of resources, a new focus on the use of power, which is Part 11, as you know, and that is actually being revised as we speak. There were some other things as well, the usual suite of supplementary legislation, General Development Order, Advertisement and Movable Structures regs. And since then we've taken steps to go even more public and to allow our documentation, application documentation, to be available online at no charge, of course. And to introduce a new merits-based appeal system, which I'll touch on in a moment. We are now actively working towards bringing planning applications online, and hope to be making announcements about that shortly. So really, one of the things that the 2002 law did was allow safe and energy-efficient buildings. I think the retention of a vibrant town centre in St Helier, which doesn't come about through accidents, that comes about through the consistent and careful application of planning policy over a long period by not allowing other uses in the town centre other than retail or other vibrant uses, and by not allowing out-of-town retail centres. So the application of policy through the Island Plan, I think, is obviously embedded in the law. And of course, green spaces, which we all know about, which people enjoy today in town. So turning now to what we've been doing this year, we have introduced a new appeal system, as you know, which was introduced in March, Amendment number 6 to the 2002 law. The inspectors' hearings, the first of those, are to be held this month. And although that's a little bit later than we would have liked as well, I think any teething problems will soon be out of the way, and we look forward to going forward with a merits-based appeal system. We all know what it's like to be in court, the Court of Appeal, and it's not always a pleasant experience.